Welcome to Retrospectrum, the podcast where we listen to way too many albums of certain bands and talk about it. This episode, we're talking about They Might Be Giants.
The general idea of this was to see how many albums a band had released and like maybe taking the idea of a band and learning a little bit more about them and kind of following the course of their career. This was an example of maybe biting off more than we could chew.
Maybe a band you should not listen to all of their albums, especially in a row.
This one really tested the limits of the premise, I think.
Yeah, this band broke me. I may seem harsh during this episode, but you fucking try to listen to all their albums in a row and tell me it's not truly maddening.
It's kind of like eating dessert, right? Like some of it's good, but if that's all you had for 2 weeks straight, you would be like, please let me have a vegetable, you know? And I think there was some of that in this episode.
Completely agree. So I talk a lot of shit in this episode. So if you're a They Might Be Giants stan, please do not come at me.
We would like to hear your thoughts and opinions about They Might Be Giants, so find us on social media at RetrospectrumPod and support us on Patreon, where you can join our Discord and chat with us about bands we've covered past and present.
And on to the show. So much shit that I want to talk to you about, but my brain is just...
Well, you went to the Trek convention in Chicago.
That was so fun.
What's the name of the con?
Star Trek Mission Chicago. It was Chicago's first Trek convention. Very enjoyable overall. Like totally worth. I just spent way too much money. I spent literally all my money just on the trip, you know. But it was totally worth it. It was so fun.
Yeah, you got to sit in the same room as William Shatner.
Yeah, I don't even give a shit about that. Like,
give a shat.
Don't give a shat. I mean, it's fine. It's cool. You know, but what I enjoyed so much about it was mainly the fans. Like my top two favorite things about it. Well, let's do top three because costumes is in there. I mean, obviously, you go to see Ferengi and Klingons like walking around. It's so fucking fun. And then, so my favorite thing of the whole thing was the panels of people that were just like normal queers.
Well, that's where you talked about you heard about the Artemis thing, right?
No, actually, the Artemis one was a specific NASA, this like super old white dude that works for NASA.
Right, but it was at the convention, wasn't it?
Yes, but the panel about the LGBTQ panel was the most enjoyable panel the entire convention that I saw. I tried to hit there were a couple feminist panels. There were like, there's a diversity panel. There's a disabilities panel. All of those panels went overtime a little bit because like there was just so much to say. And because they were they crammed them into the like small stages or whatever. So there weren't like big people waiting on them. So they didn't like rush them off the stage or whatever. Yeah, I saw some really good shit. The LGBTQ panel was like a bunch of queer podcasters and stuff. And they had just a lot of important, awesome things to say. It was nice to be in a room full of people that are like, have so much in common with you.
So two best things are costumes and the panels.
The top three best things are the panels, the costumes, and the fans. The fans were so insanely nice.
Give me like an example of that. What do you mean?
No one touched me the whole convention. Like, unless it was a thing where we're taking a picture together and maybe we're standing next to each other and our arms kind of touch or something, like the sides of our shoulders. Or like a consensual touching for a photograph, but there's no touching of my body, like non-consensual touching of my body. And that is, you wouldn't think that would be a thing that is so very rare, but it is. And especially dressed as, if I'm ever like semi undressed or dressed in a sort of sexy way, you know, the likelihood of the touching tends to go up depending on the scenario. And the day that I dressed sexy, and it may have something to do with the fact that the character I was dressed as, which was, Murakira, the intendant, is like a respected character. So everyone was treating me with respect. But I also think that it just has to do with the people, the Trek people. Trekkies, Trekkers are the best people. I'm convinced.
Trekwads.
Trekwads are the most lovely motherfuckers I've ever encountered.
Well, you know who I feel comfortable saying are probably huge Star Trek fans?
Who?
They Might Be Giants.
Yeah, and I also think that they must be fans of Cats. I think that they're cat people.
The musical or the animal?
The animal. Probably also the musical.
Yeah.
That seems like, because I think Cats is one of those musicals that the majority of people kind of think is annoying or, you know, kind of lowbrow. And if anything describes this band, it's fucking lowbrow.
All right. See, I knew we were going to be off on different paths already.
Okay, so
you
honestly,
ready to dive in? You ready to get into it?
Yes. Okay. I think the backbone of this band comes from a very intellectual place, and that's the only reason any of it is tolerable at all. What is your history with this band? Did you listen to them as a teen? Because this band is as old as we are.
Yeah, I feel like took me my entire life to listen to all their albums. I think I was exposed to them without knowing who they were. It was Tiny Toons, I'm pretty sure, was my first time ever hearing the songs, because they had Particle Man and Constantinople. I had like little Tiny Toon Adventures shorts for both of those songs. And I remember watching those as a kid. And then as I got older, I knew the name They Might Be Giants, and they had the Malcolm in the Middle theme song. And so when I was doing the LimeWire, downloading MP3s on my dial-up internet in rural Oklahoma, I had it was like a conscious decision. You get like one song a day, so you really had to decide what song. So that's why
you wasted a song.
I got 2 or 3 of them. I downloaded 2 or 3 because I always it really is music specifically geared to young me. Like all of it feels like it's designed exactly to appeal to me in like 7th grade.
You as a young teen boy who's a nerd who comes from a Christian background.
Yeah, and it's like kind of wacky and like pretty family friendly and kind of weird, but like super catchy and poppy and
kind of weird.
Some of it's more weird than others. I think it balances out to kind of weird. I think it skews from like normal's in the middle and like super weird. It's in the middle of like really weird and normal overall. I think there's some stuff on the way far spectrum, but I think there's some stuff closer to normal. But yeah, I downloaded like 3 or 4 of their songs, and so
they should have one album and only call it Closer to Normal and just put all the good.
I would argue that that's John Henry. That's the album John Henry. It's like, hang on, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. I'm trying to finish my pointless story about my history with it. I downloaded 3 of their songs, so I knew like 3 of their songs really well. And I always thought like I really like this band because I'd only heard those 3 or 4 songs. And I'd heard other stuff in passing or whatever, but I'm sure they were their major singles. And they were the ones that I recognized again.
Do you remember which songs?
Particle Man would have been one of them. Don't Let's Start. I don't know. All their names escape me now. They're all gibberish.
It's got to be Birdhouse, right?
Yeah, that one for sure. But yeah, it was all stuff like that. That was, I think, probably their bigger stuff because that was the easier stuff to find on file sharing. But that's like as far as I ever went with it. Was like, oh, there's this band. I kind of like the vibe of it. I like the way the vocals sound. I like the music. It's weird. It's kind of funny. But that was it. I never did any other digging past that. I never listened to a whole album. They were a band that like it just existed in my head, but I never really dug it.
That's pretty much my exact experience with them. And probably most people's.
Well, they had such wide exposure with Malcolm in the Middle, I think. I think if most people have any sort of casual understanding of them, that would be.
But also, like, I watched that show when it came out and I didn't even realize that they fucking did the theme song. I feel like theme songs are not things that people recognize bands from. It's one of those things that, fun fact, or like if you happen to already really like a band and you recognize them or something, like that's how it was for me with Rocco's Modern Life. Like as soon as I heard that theme song, I knew who it was because the B-52s has been my favorite band since I was 10. So...
Well, and I was going to say that's a great theme song. It's an iconic theme song, so it would make sense to know who that was. But I didn't know until we were doing this that they did the Daily Show theme song.
So did you get that information from the documentary?
No, I did not watch the documentary.
You didn't? You made me watch it? You didn't even watch it? Oh my God. I watched that whole documentary.
Well, to be fair, I did not expect you to watch it.
Wow. You insisted and you reminded me to watch it. I fucking watched it.
I did not think you were going to watch it. I was very surprised to hear that you were watching it.
Wow.
I only sent it to you because you're on the road trip and you had a couple hours to kill.
Wow. I will say I'm actually glad that I watched the documentary because it made me hate them slightly less.
Okay, so I didn't watch the documentary, but I did go down a YouTube rabbit hole and I watched them. They were on late night with Conan a bunch, but they got like interview sections where they got to sit down and talk or whatever. And they're very witty, very funny. And I like the live performances. And there's on YouTube, there's a promo video of them for the album Flood. And it's like, it's so funny. It's such like, I could see, I don't know, I can see us doing that or somebody we know doing that, where they're just like sitting at a diner and like describing the album and it's all quirky and quick
definitely
cut edits. And
for sure, these guys are my friends. Like I have all of my friends act like this. Like it's like people who watch fucking Tim and Eric will probably like this band. If you watch Tim and Eric, this is the band for you.
But they were doing it before Tim and Eric. You know what I mean? Like they're not a Tim and Eric reference. All of that stuff is referenced on them being weirdos that were out there doing weird stuff.
Maybe nothing is a reference to anything. Some of us are just all kind of similarly weird. I'm not going to say I hate this band, although I did think that to myself almost every song. But I think that they are good at what they do. What they do is annoy the fuck out of me. They're really good at that. But no, they're good. They're very talented instrumentally.
Yeah. And they can play a bunch of different stuff too.
Yes, they're talented. There's no doubt about it. Technically, they're technically good at playing music, but there's a certain level of fuck you-ness about some music that I absolutely love. But what they do goes beyond my threshold. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah.
It's like we could do music, but we're choosing to do this.
Yes, exactly. It's like, damn, they could be like us. I don't know. Okay, so in the documentary, it was really interesting because they're clearly in love with each other, and they they respect each other so much, and they both think that the other one is like the more talented one, which is cute. I love a bromance, but it's like, anyway, I don't know. They're both intellectual. Yeah. They're both talented. They both appreciate each other's talent very much and respect each other. And it's really interesting that this is the music that comes out of them. And a lot of people say that. Ira Glass is the funniest person in the documentary.
Well, that is quite a statement.
He's
that
super
tells you
funny.
What kind of audience and what kind of.
Okay, I will say I'm glad that I watched this documentary because one of the Johns is sexy as hell. Like 10 out of 10 would bang.
Okay, which brings us to the point. There's two Johns, right? Which John is it? Is it Flansburgh or Linnell?
We'll leave that up to you to decide.
Which one you think is sexy as hell, quote unquote?
Obviously,
I think it's got to be Linnell.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I think that's your choice. Okay.
The introverted one with the shaggy hair and a giant nose. Like he's hot as fuck. And he knows it too. You can tell. And he acts like apparently like he's an introvert and doesn't know. He's just being natural. But to me, from what I see as a performer, all the footage of them performing, he's hamming it the fuck up to the cameras. Like there was some, I think a Conan performance or some late night performance that was on the documentary where he was looking at the different cameras as they were changing, from camera to camera.
Yeah.
And just so sexily.
That's such a strange take I did not expect that.
He's hot as hell.
I guess I
That's
should
the
have.
best
Should have
part
seen that
about the
coming.
band. The best part about the band is how
Your
sexy
stance
John
cannot
Linnell
be
is.
the best part of they might be giants is how hot they are. That you are the only person in the world with that take.
I beg to differ. I guarantee you that
I'm not saying you're the only one who thinks they're hot, but you're the only one who would say that is the best thing about them.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, kind of what we were joking about earlier. Oh, Ira Glass is what I was talking about. And in this documentary, he pretty much says all the things that I think about this band, or not all the things, but in a slightly nicer way. But he kind of thinks the same thing as me, as like, this is just, it's as if they put every genre in a blender and then strained out all the good bits and threw those away.
That's too harsh. You're too harsh. It's like they put every genre in a blender and then an accordion and a tuba, and then this came out. But like, you're a huge fan of Weird Al, right?
Yes. Well, okay. So they have his voice has a very Weird Al, a very Bo Burnham thing going on.
Yeah.
Two nerdy white dudes that make funny, jokey music that I find very amusing. But the thing about Weird Al and Bo Burnham versus whatever this is their songs progress in a way that feels natural and is predictable. People like music because you know how music is, and you can kind of imagine what's going to come next, you know? And so when you're flowing with it, that's how you flow with it, is you kind of can expect what's going to happen. That's why people like fucking pop music so much, because it's repetitive, the same repetitive bullshit that we've all heard a million times over. I don't, need that, but the Weird Al Bo Burnham version is much more listenable than this. This is like, it's kind of like jazz in a way. I love jazz though, but this is like jazz but bad.
Every reference you use for this band, you're like, yeah, it's great. It's a thing that I love. I'm very specifically into this part of it, but I hate it.
There's something that they do on purpose that makes this shit almost unlistenable. And they know they're doing it on purpose to be funny. They just push it so far to the point of where you just want to die. Honestly, after listening to the whole discography, which is way, 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 way too fucking long, and watching the documentary and then listening to some of the songs I kind of like, I'm kind of almost coming back around on them to the point where I hate them a little less. Like, I'm almost brainwashed by it at this point because it's so much. There's so much content. That's the only fucking reason that this band is a thing, is because they just won't stop making music. They literally just will not stop. So do they have fucking day jobs? Like, how do they have the time?
There's no way we listen to everything either. There has got to be.
No. Well, because they had the dial-a-song
stuff.
Exactly.
A lot of those got released on album, but not all of them did. Okay, hang on. Let's organize ourselves here. We're all over the place.
Yeah.
Let's kind of do an overview here. So they started in 1982, right? With just the two Johns, John Flansburgh and John Linnell. And they did, over the course of their career, from what I found, 18 studio albums, 5 children's albums, 10 live albums, 10 compilation albums, and 8 EPs. The playlist that I made that I was listening to had 521 tracks and was 19 hours and 16 minutes, which, like, that's why it took me 3 to 4 weeks to get through all of long. It is. It's too much. This is a test of our binge every single song strategy here, because I think that's the worst way to listen to this.
I completely fucking agree. If you want to dislike this band, listen to them. If you want to like this band, don't really listen to them. I thought I liked this band before we started this.
You like the idea of this band.
Well, and I liked the songs that I knew, because they have one album's worth of good songs, or catchy songs, enjoyable to listen to songs.
Yeah, my
good
best of playlist I made
subjective or whatever.
22 tracks. Something
Exactly. Like that's more than enough.
So their first 3, I think, are they're the ones that was just really just the duo, just the 2 of them. I think they're known as, the 2 guys or whatever. But after those first 3 albums, it's been a full band pretty much the whole time. And those first 3 are really the ones that are that's where it gets real wonky. First 4 up through Apollo 18. But that's where there's a lot of like keyboard sounds and a lot of clarinet stuff, and it sounded like maybe some toy instruments and weird editing and funny voices. And
I love a good toy instrument in a song.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with any of these elements that they incorporate into it. As a matter of fact, all the elements that they incorporate are mostly good. It's just the way that they put it together and the way that they pound at it. Like it's just it's exhausting.
A little exhausting. Yeah.
Exhausting.
That's the word. Did you know, I got a little factoids noted down here. We were talking about space stuff earlier. Did you read the thing about Apollo 18?
I don't know.
So it was released in 1992, but it was released like in addition to them being named as ambassadors to NASA. So that's why it's all like space themed stuff. It had to do with them becoming ambassadors to NASA. I don't really know ambassadors.
What the fuck does that mean?
Probably like in the like talk to people about NASA, like, make it popular sort of thing.
Maybe they were doing something where they were going to schools and dealing with children because of Particle Man or something. This band only makes sense as a kids band.
I mean, now maybe,
or makes the most sense as a kids band.
But it reminds me of stuff I listened to, the like cheesy, like the swing revival stuff that was big in the late 90s, and like cheesy ska and stuff that's just like upbeat and kind of happy and kind of quirky. And
I basically thought this band was a ska band. Just the vague idea of this band that I've always had has been connected to ska. But there's something else for sure.
Well,
this is not a ska band,
I think, but this is more like oboe and clarinet and like tuba than there is like trumpet,
not a ska band.
Saxophone.
Well, and there's mainly just the 2 of them and then a couple other band guys, you know.
Did you listen to John Henry?
Mm-hmm.
That's my favorite album of theirs. It's the first one where they like went full band, and it just sounds like a mid-90s alternative college radio rock band. It kind of reminds me of like Cake or something like that.
Well, I wrote down as far as the influence that I heard was like Talking Heads, Primus, jazz, Weird Al, ska, Cake, country, doo-wop, Richard Cheese,
polka.
Like, yeah, there's so much in there.
Well, but that's they've been doing it for 40 years though, and we condensed that into 2 weeks. So if you stretched out our 2-week experience over 40 years, it's like if you're a fan of this band, you know that you can expect a new album every year or 2. Or with the Dial-A-Song stuff every month or whatever. I guess it was every week with
they changed it up. They did, it was different regularly. They didn't have a consistent, I don't think, amount of time.
Talk about the Dial-A-Song a little bit.
They just had a fucking answering machine and they sit there and record a song on it and you call and listen to it. That's as simple as that. I mean, that's fun. I love gimmicky shit like that. That they did that because there was something that happened where they couldn't tour. So they needed something to just stay relevant or stay like out there. So they started putting an ad in the paper for people to call it. And I think it might still be operational.
So I think that's genius, especially to do in the late 80s and 90s where it was an actual answering machine.
This band is like some kind of an art project. That I would totally be a part of or that my friends would make or something, but we would never get popular or rich off of it, Like, I don't know what the fuck you guys did that made somebody pay attention. And apparently the whole time they were like not giving a fuck about record labels and shit. They were kind of like, no, leave us alone. We're just doing our weird little thing.
They were on Elektra at the beginning. That's what they signed to release Flood on. And then it was
yeah, that's right. There were a couple people who worked there, like the chick that signed them, I think, was in the documentary. Yeah, that's right.
And then it was one of those things where everybody that signed them left, but they got dropped because they wouldn't do promotional work. They wanted them to
right.
But their songs don't sound like they're just pumped out.
No, it's impressive.
Yeah, for the most part, they're all pretty unique songs. None of them they may be annoying and you may not actually enjoy listening to them, like that particular song, but it's still its own thing. Like they've written whatever 600 songs that are all 600
Too
individual
many.
songs.
Honestly, they all kind of sounded the same to me after a while.
Well, you did kind of get in a glaze, and really that was the middle chunk or whatever, the late 90s to like really probably 2000. I don't know, their newer stuff, I guess. It all kind of blurred together for me a little bit. I wasn't crazy about their turn of the century stuff. But again, kudos to them for being marketing geniuses. They got on the internet train really early. They were active on the internet. They were the first ones to release. Yeah, exactly. They were first ones to release their album MP3 only.
Of course.
Yeah, just they're super talented. They just decided to do something weird with it instead of something straightforward.
They had some project, Venue Song. So Venue Songs is about venues, right? Each song is about a different venue, which, if you know the venue, might be amusing. So, I knew a handful of the venues. It's almost funny. It's one of those type of things, which is the majority of this band, I would say. Like, it's funny in theory until you're experiencing it. But anyway, Venue Songs to me was like basically a publicity stunt that just didn't work because I had never heard of it. Had you?
No, but again, this band was like kind of like a ghost, like I knew they existed, but I didn't really know anything about them.
It's a ghost of something good.
You're a hater.
It's like you can almost grasp it. You can see how it would be good, but then you try to grab it and your fingers just go right through it and you're just irritated.
I like some of the older stuff, but it's also like, when you're a kid and you get like the Casio keyboard that has like 295 sounds on it or whatever, right?
Mine didn't have that many sounds. Mine had like 12.
This was a band that was like, we're going to write a song with every one of these sounds.
Exactly.
And that's what they did. And you have to admire that. So there's a bunch of like stuff that to me sounds like it started as a thought experiment and then they actually made it into a thing. Like instead of sitting around saying they were going to do it, they actually made it. That's
literally every fucking song.
There's some good songs in there. I think every album has at least probably one or two songs that's worth like revisiting at bare minimum. And I really think if you listen to them spread out over the course of years, you'd get a lot more out of this band. It was a little bit like your eyes kind of glazed over the 10th time the clarinet interlude took over the song for 13 seconds before it went back to the regular song.
Dude, not even like glazed over at some points. I've never listened to a band that made me yell out loud as much as this band. I'm not fucking kidding. Even documentary, even watching that goddamn documentary that you tricked me into watching, they would start playing a song and I'd be like, like, or the song would just be going on and on and on. I'm just like, but then there are other songs that come on and I'm like, oh yeah, this is groovy. And that's what's so annoying about this band is it's like, I feel like the principal, it's like you have so much potential. Like I'm an angry dad. It's like, you could be so good, but you're choosing to do this.
You just don't understand.
Yeah, I know. I don't. But actually I do. Like, I get it. I get it theoretically. I just do not enjoy it.
I think that's reasonable. And I feel the same way. Like, honestly, one of my routines is laying in bed, going to sleep, listening to music with headphones on and just kind of like relaxing and letting the music like, getting kind of into it and like just kind of wind down for the day. This is the worst band is the worst band to do that to. It's like you put the headphones in and you're just like bouncing around and
dude,
I don't know.
I tried to watch the documentary. Like it was the last thing I watched before going to bed last night. Total mistake. And the fucking last thing, like when I opened my computer back up this morning, it was still playing and it was like blaring at me. I'm like,
decent alarm clock music though. I mean, it would really like disorient you to the point of being awake. But so I got kind of burned out on it the midway through, but I really genuinely enjoyed their last two albums. I found one of the ones that gave me the idea to do this band was I found I Like Fun on vinyl. And it was like, oh, I know this band. I have that, I know 6 or 8 of their songs. I kind of like them. It's $10, whatever. And so I went home and put it on and listened to it. And it's solid it's not great or anything, but it's solid from front to back. There's only 1 or 2 weird, quirky songs that I wouldn't really care to listen to again.
But I was like, oh man, these guys are actually really good. They have like a pretty normal sound. Like I'd always heard they were kind of weird and experimental and stuff, but I was like, this just sounds like 90s alternative rock, like now being
I
done now.
thought The Else almost sounded like a real album. Like they almost have a style, a little bit more serious about it, still random.
Well, how'd you feel about their newer
bullshit
stuff?
like here and there, but that I think when was The Else? Maybe that was 2007. So
Yeah.
I liked their newer shit was slightly less annoying to me, I think. So here's the thing. The last band we talked about, Saves the Day, which is a band I would much rather listen to.
Disagree. Hard disagree.
For real though.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. That is I don't even know what to say about that. But anyway, continuing my thought. I took half a page of notes for Saves the Day. I took 3 pages of notes for They Might Be Giants. To be fair, most of it is jokey insults. So I didn't really write down what I thought about every single album or anything. To be quite frank, most of them all blended together as well. And I was just trying to bang it out because there was so much of it and it was so fucking irritating to me. But I did write down notes on a few albums, and one of them is I thought once I got to Mink Car, I was like, okay, actually this one's not so bad. Like I thought Mink Car was the best one. And that was like the first album that I got to where I was like, okay, this is less annoying than the rest. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, that's like 9 albums in at that point.
11. I had already listened to 11 by the time I got to Mink Car. And I remember thinking They Got Lost, I think wasn't so bad, but I didn't write that down, so I could be wrong. Cast Your Pod, I thought was almost funny if it wasn't so fucking annoying.
I think that's how you said everything for this.
Yeah.
There were a couple of times where they have a bunch of compilation albums where it just, takes older, 3 or 4 tracks off older stuff. I get halfway through a comp album and be like, have I heard these songs before? And then be like, no, I've already done this once. I'm not. It made me mad. I was like, I'm not.
That made me mad as well. So then I looked up every single album and wrote down which songs were only on only the new ones, so the compilation albums each had a couple of songs that weren't on anything else. So then I would just go listen to those 2 or whatever.
I do think that they're a good band to do the binge listen to because there's a pretty
I
heavy.
Completely fucking disagree.
Well, listen to my reasoning here before you disagree. I know that, but it's fun to watch the change. I think they were responsive to the times, but kind of like ahead of the curve in a lot of ways with their songs and with their sound and with their style change and all that stuff. And even their gimmicky advertising and doing stuff on the internet, and it was fun to hear their sound develop.
A lot of first time things.
Yeah. I don't know that every album needs to have 23 songs on it. I think if every album had about 10 to 13, it would have made it a much more enjoyable experience. Because there were some times where I opened it and I was like, oh my God, 24 songs on this.
It's almost like they're just doing it to see what happens.
Yeah.
Like, are people going to listen to this? Yeah. Let's fuck with them.
Well, and so many of them were the Dial-A-Song. There were like 5 albums that are Dial-A-Song compilations where they just took all the songs that they were doing once a week and then just packaged them together and released them as an album. Rather than writing and recording like a cohesive album all at once, it was recorded. I'm
surprised these motherfuckers don't have a podcast.
They did for like 10 years. They did podcasts every month or every other month or something.
Probably
like that.
Before it was.
Probably at the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah, I feel like definitely ahead of the curve. Yeah.
But they did cool stuff on it where they talked about their songs and like the history of their songs, but they would also release like remixes of songs or do like in-studio performances on the podcast. Like if you like this band, you can spend the rest of your life just listening to this band and alternate takes of stuff and different versions.
And that's not necessarily a good thing.
Well, it's like if you like this band, because we didn't even talk about the kids albums. They also did 5 kids albums. So, which I think is super smart for a band like this that had, were probably the most popular in the early 90s. And then when their fans grow up and start
their
having
demographic
babies,
is children.
Yeah. Because rather than like, if you had a kid and you listen to They Might Be Giants in 1990, and now you've got a 6-year-old, would you rather listen to the Teletubbies album or They Might Be Giants singing about dinosaurs? Which is like, they sing about dinosaurs on their regular albums. So kids album.
Right. Well, and that is something there are those types of people who are just a little bit too smart for their own good, a lot of subject matter of their songs is shit that no one else knows about. It's like, who the fuck are you talking about?
Oh yeah, there were a ton of references
Man
of, like,
from history.
yeah, authors and
Just
stuff.
all kinds of shit. Like, they're all over the fucking place. So yeah, they're almost too intellectual for their own good.
Okay, so I would say that people who like Weird Al and Bo Burnham, Mystery Science Theater fans, I think would be good crossover. They might be
I
Giants
guarantee you,
fans.
Star Trek nerds.
Star Trek nerds, I think, like Cake or that era of music that doesn't take itself too seriously.
I think a lot of people that think they like this band haven't actually listened to the majority of it.
I think all those people would like this band, just nobody should listen to all 500 songs in a row. It's too much. It's not meant to be consumed that way. It's meant to be consumed one song a week, you know, when you call in on your payphone and listening to the answering machine. That's the ideal way to listen to this band.
Yes, one song a week for the rest of your life.
Yeah, binge listening to it is not the way to do. But that's another. They do have a lot of wacky, goofy sounding songs, but there's also a lot that are like, I am painfully depressed and there's despair everywhere and we're all going to die.
So they talked in the documentary about that at one point. One of the women that they interviewed was saying that that's what she really enjoyed about them, is that the lyrics were really depressing and relatable, but it was like such an upbeat tempo that it made her feel better about the depression. And I do like music like that, but I still don't like this music.
Yeah, I know. It's like if you had a checklist of all the stuff you like about music, this band probably hits 60 to 70% of those things. But still, you can't get on board. Well, I got kind of burnt out on them, but after doing I took a little bit of space and then I watched a couple of the YouTube videos so they were talking, and then I listened to the like best of playlists that I made where it was bouncing between all their albums, and I was like, you know what, I think I like this band. I really think that I've been to this band. I would really like to see them live. I think that would
after
be really
I watched
fun.
the documentary, I was like, okay, I'll go, but only to stare at this hot guy and see how well he aged. Like I have been saying the whole time, I fucking get it. I just don't enjoy it being forced upon me. It's and if the whole goal of this whole podcast situation for you was to see who could annoy the other person the most with their choice,
it wasn't.
Well, if you win on your second try, and so because of that, I actually bought you a gift, but it happened to be in that $300 package that the fucking postal service lost. So you cannot have your gift. But just so you know, I got you a lapel pin in the shape of a birdhouse.
Oh, that's nice. I like that. I was gonna guess that it was a self-playing harmonica that you couldn't turn off.
One of those fish that you hang on the wall that sings.
Yeah, that sings "They Might Be Giant" songs at like randomly timed intervals.
No, see, here's the difference between you and I: is I am not a horrible person. You make these decisions to torture me, and in return, I get you a gift when I should be getting myself a goddamn birdhouse pen because this was torture.
I think that I had carefully weighed the value of the joke versus the harm that would come, and I think this was a good decision. I think we're both better off having done this. Would you recommend this band to people?
No. It depends. Am I trying to torture someone in like a war setting and get information out of them? Because if so, then yes. Is your job a war torturing individual? That's probably got a name.
That's a different answer. I'm not saying would you recommend binge listening to all
Absolutely
songs?
Fucking not.
No, I get that. I wouldn't either, and I like them. I came out on the
I recommend
positive side of it,
that
I still wouldn't recommend.
Like I said at the beginning, if you want to like this band, I recommend that you don't listen to them.
There's a lot of layers.
I think I might like them as people. I can't really tell.
Oh, that was their original name. So I think that I would recommend that people listen to this band the way it was intended, one song a week, which would take a decade. I think that'd be perfect. I think you get one They Might Be Giant song.
I would not recommend that. Do not do that.
Yep. For 520 weeks. And then get back to me. Let me know what that was.
I would recommend that you listen to our playlist of their best songs.
Oh, good recommendation. We'll add that in the show notes.
I will say, John and John, don't dim your light just because some of us don't understand all your references. Keep doing what you're doing. Somebody likes it.
And also, don't expect us to get all your references on the first try. It's a little dense for that, I would say.
The band name itself is a Don Quixote reference, which is on par with the band as a whole. So if you like obscure literary references, this is the band for you.
Yeah, interesting that you called them lowbrow. And I think that just by sheer force of number of literary references,
They're a weird mix of lowbrow and highbrow, like smashed together, that is very nonsensical to me.
I think,
but also makes perfect sense.
Yeah, exactly. The smashed together aspect of it is something that comes through in almost every part of their music, whether it's the genres or the content versus the sound, or there's a lot of like juxtaposition of ideas.
I'm not trying to piss people off with this episode. I'm just being a little jokester. This band specifically is a very like jokey, non-serious band, and I feel like comfortable talking shit about them, especially since it's two white men. I think they can handle it. So I'm talking a lot of shit, but I don't fucking hate these guys and I don't fucking hate this band. I mean, maybe a little, but it's just hard. It's just really hard to listen to so much content of one crazy sounding band. It's a very specific thing to listen to so much of.
And in most cases, you'd be able to step away and just be like, hey, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to listen to something else. But when we're on this, kind of something of a deadline,
it's a fucking
time
marathon
constraint thing,
yeah.
And it's like, you don't like, no, you got to do the next one. This one really was one that pushed us to the limit, I would say.
So my question was, did you have any favorites or standout anything?
Well, and it's kind of cliche. I mean, it matches how their record sales went and like their chart success and all that stuff. But I think Flood is the album from them that like you need to listen to. Like I think it's an album that has a place in popular culture and was the most impactful. It was the one with I think their most well-known songs and will be the one that is probably that they're remembered for. And it is pretty early on in their discography. It's their major label debut. I think it's the one that is most well known just kind of in general. But if you haven't heard this band, that would be the album out of the 20 some odd of them that I would say go listen to Flood. Like that's the one that, and then go from there in any direction or whatever direction. If you like the weirder stuff, work your way backwards from there. If you like the more, I think they get a little more normal alternative music after that. And then I don't know. There's just so much wacky, weird stuff that like compilation albums might be a good way to go after Flood. So I think maybe like Flood for sure as an album, and then work your way through some compilations that kind of pull from different albums and different sources. And honestly, their new stuff. I mean, they're still putting things out, so it's not a bad time to start buying their new albums and just pick up from there.
I will say that my favorite song of theirs is Don't Let's Start, and that's on the first album.
Yeah.
So I feel like the first three, I feel like, are pretty all kind of similar. And yeah, the one you recommended, Flood, is has their two biggest hits on it.
Yeah, Birdhouse. Well, Anna Ing on Lincoln is also a great song. Like again, it's hard because there's so many albums. Every album has so many songs on it. And really, there are probably a handful of those that are like, yeah, these are the ones you should listen to. But it's hard to know that when you're going in. And a lot of it gets drowned out in stuff that is, again, not filler. Like all of their songs are good quality. Like you can tell that they made with like songwriting skills.
It was purposeful.
Yes, that's the word I'm looking for. But it's just it's a lot to sift through to get to the ones that you like.
Couldn't agree more. That's the main problem with bands with so many albums, so much content, is it's so hard to distill it down to like the essence of what it is.
Well, and they're a band that like refuses distillation also. They don't
yeah.
They don't have, it's not like there are bands that consistently sound the same every album. And maybe their production value got better, or maybe they got better at their instruments, or maybe they like brought in a keyboard player in their third album or something, but that's not this band. They have a real kitchen sink approach where they just tried a lot of things all the time. They were always trying something new from song to song, within albums, from album to album. It's a maximalist style, and it can be a little overwhelming for sure.
That's that is yes. Maximalist is exactly correct.
But I do like I want to say they are an intelligent band. Like you know that even within their little wacky, almost childlike song structures and like nursery rhyme sort of ideas, there's a ton of like literary references. If you may, and these exist, there are Wikipedias based just on They Might Be Giants, and so you could spend time in there just figuring out what they're talking about in their music and what their references are and all that stuff. So it's dense. It's too dense to be able to fully comprehend the way that we did it and fully do justice in a, an hour long conversation.
I would love it if they themselves, I was gonna at first say like some nerd with a lot of time on their hands, but it would be even more correct and if they themselves went out of their way to have some kind of key. They need a fucking website that lists every reference they make in every single fucking song and tells you what the hell they're talking about. And I feel like actually that knowing what they're talking about would definitely make it more enjoyable to me. Like even if the sound is irritating to me, like at least knowing what they're talking about would definitely like add to it for me.
That's the Mystery Science Theater connection, because I remember being a kid and watching that show, and they would make some random reference to like a movie star from the 40s, and I would have no idea what they were talking about. But as I got older, I would know, like it would, oh, now I get it, because I would know what the reference was or know who the actor or what movie they were riffing on. And I think there's a lot of that in this band too. And some of that is going to be lost to time. They're going to be a little more time sensitive references.
That's why they need a key, man. And it's funny that you say, like, you're talking about them being intellectual and stuff. Their kids' songs have a lot, like, they kind of, as a lot of kids' songs do, they're like teaching you stuff. But yeah, so I did go and listen to some of the kids' music, and I stand by what I said. I think that they make a lot more sense as a kids' band. And they had a song called Where Do They Make Balloons that is rather lovely. So there were a few of the kids' songs that I was like, I like this. And the nostalgia of like Tiny Toons and stuff is totally there for me, for sure. Like that episode with Particle Man or whatever, where I'm pretty sure they were in a wrestling ring fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like that was a really fun, I remember that super vividly. So I do have like a sort of a nostalgic energy towards this band that hopefully wasn't too diminished by listening to every single fucking piece of content I could find on them,
Yeah, and I really do think that it's too much of anything, even if it is something you enjoy or something you like. And that's what I was really trying to reconcile, what I know your musical taste to be, and I know your vibe to be, and I know like your references and all that stuff, and why They Might Be Giants hits so many of those points for you, but why you had such a like negative, like a viscerally negative reaction to, like you said, it made you scream out loud or whatever. Like why, what is it about this band? And I really just, it's like an overstimulation sort of thing. It's
They're
like
just so fucking relentless.
Yeah.
I love some of their songs. I actively love some of their songs. Like Don't Let's Start is in my head all the fucking time, and a lot of their songs are in my head all the time. The one about Take Out the Trash, that one's hilarious. That's in my head all the time. Like they're super funny and they're smart and they're very talented. Like I do like a lot of things about this band. Obviously, I do never want to listen to them for longer than a few songs at a time.
Yeah.
But in theory, this band has a lot of good things about it. Not in theory. This band has a lot of good things about it.
Too much of a good thing is still too much. So would you?
The dessert comparison was smart, and also like listening to it today, I was thinking like this is like there's obviously like neurodivergence is a spectrum, and I feel like this band it is gonna appeal to a lot of neurodivergent people that are a certain brand, but then there's a certain brand like me that it's just too fucking overstimulating and like it's just too much. And so my neurodivergence says no to this.
I really
specific.
wonder how you would respond to seeing them live, where it's, it's a limited setting. You get to see the live production of it. You get to have that live experience. I wonder if that would be.
For real, if they come around, I will go and I will let you know because I bet I will like it and have fun.
Yeah.
Because I bet that they're really fun on stage. I bet their audience is super fun. And I bet their audience is nice too.
Well, and that's that Star Trek comparison too.
Exactly. The type of people that listen to this, I bet are mostly nice and like positive people. Would be my guess.
Nice to people who disagree with how they feel about They Might Be Giants.
Nice to people who talk as shit for an hour about them on a podcast.
Yes, those have to be.
Please
if you're
be
not,
nice to
you're
me.
not a real They Might Be Giants fan.
Thank you. Thanks for saving me there.
They have a song called I'm Sick of This American Life, which has to be a dig at Ira Glass. So if you said he was rude about them in that documentary, I think
he
we
wasn't
found
rude.
out.
He was just fucking hilarious and honest. Like I agreed with everything he
Well,
said.
there you go.
Although,
They're sick of him.
a lot of people might think I'm fucking rude for what maybe they'll write a song about how they're sick of me. Who fucking knows? It's going to be called Retrospectrum.
I'll bet that
On their
song
next
will be
album,
titled We'll Continue
2025.
to Not Have Any Idea Who You Are. And eventually, they're going to write a song about every person in America. So we all will have our turn. We just have to wait for them to get to us.
My 5 minutes of fame comes from that They Might Be Giants song about how I'm fucking annoying to them instead of them being annoying to me.
Yeah. Only fair.
So there you have it. The mythical, the mystical, They Might Be Giants.
Yeah, let's give it up. Let's give it up and give up on They Might Be Giants.
Okay, are you ready to tell me who is your Wheel of Death pick for this episode?
Yes, and it centers around that idea where you said like They Might Be Giants it really only makes sense as a kid band. And kind of how we talked about like ska and stuff can be a little goofy and kind of like for children or childlike. This one ties into both of those ideas. There's 90s ska band, the Aquabats. They parlayed their career into children's media after the Aquabats. So our Wheel of Death entry for this is going to center around that idea. We're going to do Yo Gabba Gabba as our Wheel of Death entry. They have 5 albums, but we'll do the Yo Gabba Gabba soundtrack discography.
I don't think I really know what Yo Gabba Gabba is.
Oh, well, you're in for a treat.
The Aquabats, I fucking love the Aquabats.
Well, see, that's why they're not going on Wheel of Death, because that one would just be fun. Like, that would be a pleasant experience. And I think Yo Gabba Gabba might be fun, too, but it's going to also have some of that, like, we're going to be listening to just straight up kids music at that point. So I think it'll be, I think it will have some interesting, it'll be an opportunity to learn about a cool aspect of a band we already know, but also maybe drive us a little bit closer to insanity.
So that is a kids TV show.
Yes.
Was it a band before the TV show or?
Well, it's the Aquabats like produced it and made it.
Oh, Yo Gabba Gabba is the Aquabats?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay, this is gonna be fucking cool. I hope we get them when we spin the wheel because that'll be cool. Okay. Are you ready to hear who we're doing next?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, next episode is Bikini Kill.
Oh, Bikini Kill. Keeping it
Riot
like
Girl, baby.
Riot Girl, early 90s, right? Kind of same time frame as some of the, I mean, I guess They Might Be Giant spans decades.
Literal decades.
But like they kind of would have had a peak-ish at the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool. That'll be good. That'll be, because I know like some Riot Girl mythology or whatever, but it'll be fun to dig into that movement. And
I was like already just on the punk train, and I was basically like one of the boys. So like I was never really got exposed to the Riot Girl thing.
Well, and it's like right at a generation ahead of us too. Like it was a little bit before. I mean, we were
slightly more Gen X vibes.
Yes, yeah, it's a little more Gen X than us. I mean, not that it ended or whatever right then, but
right. And like what I was gonna say is that does affect how you listen to music, like whether or not it came out in your time.
Yeah.
But not completely because, like Bikini Kill was popular, around the same time Nirvana was popular, and I was obsessed with Nirvana as a kid and was kind of unaware of Bikini Kill's existence for most of my teenage years.
Wonder if there's any connections between Nirvana and Bikini Kill.
We'll find out on the next episode of Retro Spectrum.
Okay, that would have been a great place to end it, but we got to do our plugs. Check us out on social media at Retrospectrum Pod. Send us emails. Tell us, good things about the show that you're enjoying. Maybe suggest bands you'd like to see us cover in future episodes. And be sure and join the Patreon. See you next time.
Bye.
Retro